Hello, my dear students. I hope you're all doing very well. I hope you're all safe. I hope you're all staying at home. I hope all your loved ones and your friends and your family members are all together and are safe. If we follow the center, state, and the local authorities' guidelines and stay at home and take care of ourselves and our family members, then we can all go back to our normal old lives very soon. In today's lecture, we will study about the right to religion. The right to religion under Articles 25 to 28 of the Indian Constitution has been a very contentious area, especially over the last 2 to 3 years. The Sabarimala judgment involved questions of the freedom of religion and the right to religion. Um, the Shaira Bano case, also known as the Triple Talaq case, played a major role in and raised some major questions under Article 25 to 28, and a lot of constitutional upheavals that we've seen, a development of constitutional jurisprudence that we have seen in India over the last few years has involved the question of the freedom to practice, profess, and propagate religion. Secondly, India is a secular country, and yet we are involved deeply in religion. I've told you multiple times that we have our own version of Nehruvian and Indian and Gandhian secularism, where the state is not separate from the church. The state is involved with the church. It's just that it is involved with all the churches, all the religions, where the church, mosque, synagogue, temple, doesn't matter. Whatever might be the case, whatever might be the religion, the state treats everyone equally and is not at all discriminating. That is the difference between Western secularism and Indian secularism. And that is why Articles 25 to 28 are much more important. What does Article 25 say? It is the most important article under right to religion, and it says that the freedom of conscience and free profession, practice, and propagation of religion will be allowed. That means you can practice, you can profess, and you can propagate your religion, and that freedom is available to all of you. Articles 25 and 26 go hand in hand. So 26 talks about freedom to manage religious affairs. The only difference is that Article 25 is a right that individuals have, and Article 26 is a right that groups have, or organizations have, or bodies have, or a collection of people have. 25 and 26, but however, go hand in hand. We will learn 26 in this lecture itself, just in a few minutes. See, religion itself has not been defined by the constitution. The Supreme Court had to take up the exercise of defining, and this happened in the case of Commissioner of Hindu Religious Endowments. Commissioner of Hindu Religious Endowments versus Sri Lakshmindra Tirtha Swamiyar of Shirur Mutt. So, Commissioner of Hindu Religious Endowments versus Sri Lakshmindra Tirtha Swamiyar of Shirur Mutt, also known as the Shirur Mutt case of 1954. In this case, the Supreme Court decided what can come under the definition of religion, because the constitution itself never defined it. That religion is a system of beliefs and doctrines that, according to the followers of that religion, lead to spiritual well-being. It may include rituals and practices that take these beliefs and doctrines forward. So religion is a collection of beliefs and doctrines which, according to the believers of that religion, will lead to spiritual well-being. And this process of spiritual well-being can include rituals, can include practices which take these beliefs, which take that religion forward. This is what the Supreme Court said in 1954 in the Shirur Mutt case. Now, Article 25, Clause 1 says that subject to public order, morality, health, and other articles in Part 3. That is public order, morality, and health, along with other articles of Part 3. All these four elements bearing in mind, you have the right to practice, profess, and propagate your religion. So your right to religion is restricted by public order, is restricted by morality, is restricted by health, and is restricted by Part 3. Other Part 3, right? So Santara is a practice in Jainism where people stop eating and eventually they attain samadhi. That is the belief, but in scientific terms, it's considered to be slow suicide, and that is why Santara is held to be unconstitutional. That does not form a part of the right to religion. So petitions have been filed in the Supreme Court. They're saying that it's integral to every Jain, but that is not being allowed by the Supreme Court, because when you stop eating, your health is affected, and health is a ground under which you can restrict right to religion. You don't have a right to commit suicide. Your right to life does not include your right to die, and therefore, the part 3, other fundamental rights included in part 3, also is a ground under which you can restrict right to religion. That's why Santara is not allowed. Similarly, women were being treated in an unequal manner when they were not allowed to enter Shabrimala. Article 15 says that all religious places will be thrown open to everyone. Article 14 says everyone will be treated equally. There was no reasonable classification in not allowing women to go to Shabrimala, and that is why in Shabrimala, women entry has been allowed. So other part 3 rights will restrict the scope of your right to religion. But however, you do not have a right to spread hatred. You cannot say that while preaching your religion, you cannot criticize other religions and then say it's my right to freedom of religion. No, you cannot spread hatred. Hatred will lead to incitement to offense. And incitement to offense is a reasonable ground under which your speech can be restricted. In Lily Thomas versus Union of India, Lily Thomas versus Union of India 2000, it was said that it is true that Muslim men are allowed to marry 4 times. But a man who converts to Islam so that he can legally marry a second wife will not be allowed. So what happened? As far as I know, Lily Thomas's husband, who was a Christian, converted to Islam so that his second marriage could become valid, but that was not allowed. Court was very clear. Court said that if you convert from one religion to another, and the benefits of that second religion will not automatically transfer to you. So you cannot become a Muslim just so that your second marriage becomes valid. That is not allowed. Lily Thomas said so. And therefore, prosecution under for the offense of bigamy will happen. In the state of Javed versus state of Haryana, in the case of Javed versus state of Haryana, an order of the Haryana state government was challenged. What did this order say? If you have more than 2 children, you will not be allowed to contest panchayat elections. So if you have more than 2 children, you will not be allowed to contest panchayat elections. So there was a petition filed saying, I'm a Muslim man, I'm legally allowed to have 4 wives. So even if I have one child from each wife, I'll have 4 children, which means I am not allowed to become a panchayat member. Supreme Court said having 4 wives is not integral to the practice of Islam. You are allowed to have, most welcome to have, but it is, you don't stop being a Muslim just because there are plenty of Muslims around the world who only have one wife and are leading a very pious life of Islam according to what the Quran says. That's what the Supreme Court said. So there is no compulsion that as a Muslim you should marry 4 times. Therefore, if you have more than 4 wives and if you have more than 4 children, and that is why you are stopped from becoming a panchayat member, there is nothing wrong, because it is more important that as an Indian you can help in the controlling of India's population. You are a Muslim, but you are an Indian Muslim, and that is why your Indianness should come first. That is what the Supreme Court said. According to Article 25, Clause 2, Subclause A, regulation of a secular act associated with a religion is allowed. So, according to Hindu religion, there is a practice of having Gurukulas, where some things are taught to the students. Let us say, as a Hindu group opens up a Gurukul where Vedas are taught. It is correct on part of the government to interfere and place some restrictions. Like for example, Vedas are only being taught to Brahmin kids. The government can interfere and say, no, if you want to teach Vedas in a Gurukul system, teach, no problem, but it should be taught to everyone. Government has the right to do that, and your right to freedom of religion is not restricted, is not absolute. This is something that the government, that the courts have clarified, that the article itself clarifies. In a 1958 case of M.H. Qureshi versus State of Bihar, it was said that cow slaughter can be restricted. M.H. Qureshi was the State of Bihar, 1958. So the practice of uh, slaughtering a cow during Bakrid is not an integral practice, and therefore cow slaughter can be regulated because prevention of cow slaughter is also mentioned in DPSP. That is something. At the same time, slaughtering of cows hurts someone else's religion. That is why we can arrive at a balance. That's what the court said. So a young milk giving cow will not be slaughtered, but a cow that is older than the age of 16 can be slaughtered. This is also something that M.H. Qureshi mentioned. But at the same time, you don't need to do it in a public place where other people's conscience is affected. You don't need to slaughter even a 16-year-old cow in front of everyone. This is something that the court clarified. And slaughtering of cow, eating of meat is a secular act. It's not restricted to one religion alone. So that is why we can make laws regarding cow slaughter. In the Jagannath temple case, minimum wages was not being paid. It was as recently as 1997, Jagannath temple of Puri, Rath Yatra. So the Rath Yatra, the temple where Rath Yatra happens, they had employed some people and were not paying the minimum wage. Supreme Court said employment of people is a secular activity. So if we say that minimum wages should be paid and this is bound by the Minimum Wages Act, then it is bound by the Minimum Wages Act and no questions asked. It's a secular act. If you don't pay minimum wage, it's not as if the religious ceremony will be affected. If you pay minimum wage, also religious ceremony will not be affected. Then what is the problem? That's what the court said. According to Article 25, Clause 2, Subclause B, 25 2b, all Hindu temples and Hindu public places of worship, temples, places where you can go and pray, everything will be open to everyone. This goes hand in hand with Article 15, Clause 1. Remember that. Throwing open of religious places. See, you must remember that people who belong to a certain caste and lower, were not allowed to go to temples. Temple entry was restricted to upper castes and and the upper member of the lower castes. And the Supreme Court, the Constitution, and subsequently in decisions, the Supreme Court also has upheld that no one will be denied their right to religion. If your religious practice says don't allow that person to pray, then you're wrong, because that person has the right to pray. That is what the court said, and that is what the Constitution also says. Please read all these articles in the Bare Act. Sati abolition, which the British did long ago, but we have continued it because some places sati was happening despite it being illegal. So taking stringent measures against the practice of sati, preventing people from marrying more than once, bigamy, preventing people from taking dowry. All these things affect other fundamental rights, affect other people's rights, affect other people. If you're not alive, then how are you going to pray? And if I want to pray and my prayer requires that I uh, take dowry from some person, or if I kill some person, or if I marry more than once, then that cannot be allowed. Everyone's right should be balanced. I have a right to marry, and I have a right to marry according to my religious rituals, of course. But that cannot prevent someone else's rights. That is what the article tries to convey. Your rights end where my nose begins. This is one very old saying. All this principle is very true. The Shabarimala case, again, I keep going back to that, is another example. Young Lawyers Association versus State of Kerala is a 2018 judgment. Women were not allowed to go to temple. So why does your right as a man to pray, how is it affected by a woman? When she doesn't go there, her right to pray, she cannot even pray. Her right is affected. But just because a woman is standing, no one is stopping you from praying. That's what the court said. It is true that you can manage your own religious affairs, as 26 says, but those again are subject to restrictions. You cannot manage in any way that you deem fit. It brings me to Article 26, freedom to manage religious affairs. Again, subject to public order, morality, health. All religious denominations, as you will see in the article, are allowed to do four things: establish and maintain a charity. Donating to religious charity is also an income tax relief you can obtain. Section 11, as far as I know, Section 10, Section 11 of the Income Tax Act. I might be wrong, please verify, but I'm quite sure. Donating to religious charities will help you get income tax benefits. So Article 26 says you can manage your religious charity. B, you can manage your own affairs. C, you can own and acquire movable as well as immovable property. And D, you can manage these immovable and movable property according to the law. In the case, in a very, very famous case concerning Article 26 from 1983, SP Mittal versus Union of India, the question was, people are living in Auroville. Is Auroville a separate religious denomination? They went on to say that Auroville is not a separate religious denomination, but they answered, how do you define religious denomination? The definition is simple. The people must have a common faith. There must be a common organization based on that faith. And this organization must have a distinctive name. And it's sad because there was a common faith. Everyone who was in Auroville believed in the words of Aurobindo and his successor, the mother. They called themselves and they lived in Auroville and they behaved in a certain way, but at the same time they didn't have a specific name, and that is why SP Mittal said that Auroville and people who follow the teachings of Aurobindo do not form a separate denomination, they form part of Hinduism itself. See, managing religious affairs can include the temple saying that from January 1st to January 15th, we are going to have special puja, so no one will be allowed to come. That is allowed. But at the same time, from January 1st to January 15th, only the members of the upper caste will be allowed to come. That is not allowed. So you can manage your own affairs by saying that during this time, according to our belief, it is the God's birthday week or something like that. The God was born, these 2 weeks lead to the God's birthday. That is why special pujas need to be done. So general public cannot come. That is allowed. That is totally allowed. But you cannot say that only specific community members can come now. It might so happen that the people who are doing the puja belong to a certain community. But 4 people are doing puja, 4 more people are going to help. There are more members of that community. All of them are allowed. That will not be permitted. But 4 people are doing puja, 4 people are going to help. It doesn't matter that they belong to the same community. They are going there for some work. So, yeah. Expelling a nun from a church. Recently, a nun has been expelled from the church that she is a part of in Kerala. Excommunicating people. So Parsis have this practice where if a woman marries a non-Parsi, then she will be removed. The Dawoodi Bohra community has a practice of expelling people who marry outside or do things that don't agree with their Dawoodi Bohra beliefs. Excommunication is allowed. 26B, Management of Religious Affairs, allows the excommunication of people. This is a right that is given to uh, the people, but at the same time saying something like only Brahmins will be appointed to this post, only Brahmins are qualified to, or only upper caste members are qualified, that is not allowed. In a Hindu temple, only a Hindu will do puja, acceptable. But only a Brahmin will do puja, that is not acceptable. That excommunication is allowed, but at the same time reserving based on caste is not allowed. This is something that you need to know. This is a feature of the right to religion. And 26A, managing charities, educational institutions, if they are run in a charitable manner. I have a temple. The donation that I put in the temple goes towards a school that is for poor people. Maybe some 10 rupees fees we are taking, but of course it takes more than 10 rupees to educate a person. But as a nominal amount, 10 rupees, don't even give it to us, deposit it in the temple. And that temple, everyone is allowed to go to the temple. That money we take and we run a school. That comes under 26A, running a charity. The charity will include a charitable school. This was mentioned in a 2002 case of TMA Pai Foundation versus State of Karnataka, a case that affects the right to education also, and you will see that in the next lecture on cultural and educational rights, TMA Pai Foundation versus State of Karnataka. Article 26C and 26D, simple. It says that subject to all the laws that are prevailing, you can buy movable and immovable property. So temple can buy an auto rickshaw, and provided you follow all the traffic rules, and the auto rickshaw can be used as a transport to buy all these things that you need for your pujas and all that. You can buy a truck. A temple trust can buy a truck. A temple trust can buy a bike. A temple trust can buy property. But at the same time, you bring an elephant and the elephant escapes. You bring an elephant and you keep it on the property. The elephant escapes, causes damage. You must have learnt in your law of thoughts that if you bring a dangerous animal, then you need to know that there are risks associated. And even if you take all reasonable care, if it escapes, you are liable. Tort law is clear. Similarly, you buy your property, you again you're allowed to buy an elephant, bring an elephant, the elephant escapes, you're liable. The law will apply to you. You cannot say right to religion, I was allowed to bring. No, no, no. That is not allowed. But at the same time, you must also remember that as a private person, if you buy a house, the government can acquire that house. The government can say that we are going to build metro here, so please give us your house. But at the same time, as a private person, you have the right to say that my house in today's market, it is worth 1 crore, you give me 1 crore. Government has to give. In today's market rate, my house is worth 1 crore, give me 1 crore. Similarly, if a temple buys property, same. Sarkar can come and take it away. Keshwanand Bharati was a state of Kerala, a religious head, property was taken away. So you must remember that Keshwanand Bharati and the Edanir Mutt had the right to buy property, and they did. But at the same time, just because they are a religious organization doesn't mean that the government cannot take away their property, cannot acquire their property. But at the same time, you can't just take it away. It's worth 1 crore, I give you 1 rupee. No, it's worth 1 crore, at least give me 90 lakhs, right? At least give me, ideally give me 1 crore, but at least give me 90 lakhs. Don't give me like 10 lakhs. That's not allowed according to the law. What does Article 27 say? Article 27 talks about freedom from taxation, religious taxation. So the government is not allowed to tax a person, so the proceeds of which go to one religion particularly. You cannot say Hindu tax. All the people who are in this living in India will have to pay a tax, and this will be used for the development of Hindu temples. That's not allowed. You cannot allow secular country. You cannot tax. In the Shirur Mutt case, it was very clearly stated that a specific religion cannot benefit, at the same time a specific religion cannot be taxed. So you cannot tax only Hindus for the purpose of something, and at the same time you cannot tax everyone for the purpose that will be used for only the development of Hindu temples or something like that. The Shirur Mutt case clarified that. At the same time, state funds cannot be used. See, we have a temple, let us say some historical temple is there. State funds are used to repair the temple. See, now the temple is old and it becomes a cultural heritage site. The temple is old, it becomes a cultural heritage site. A mosque is old. Taj Mahal, for example, in the Taj complex, in the Qutub complex, there are mosques. State money, our tax money is used to maintain them. That is because they are historical. They have historical significance. So when you maintain the mosque in the Taj Mahal, you are maintaining a tourist cultural heritage spot. When you maintain an old Madurai Meenakshi temple, it is a cultural heritage spot, nearly 2000 years old. The temple is being maintained not because it is a temple, but because it is a historical spot. That is allowed. Many of the Shankaracharya mutts, it's there in Shirur, it's there in Dwarka, it's there in Puri. These are all again more than 2000 years old. Before Christian era, BC, they were established in before Christian era. If you can you need to maintain them irrespective of religion. There is a synagogue. Synagogue is a place where Jews worship. In Bombay, there is synagogue. In Kochi, there is synagogue. If you lose them, you lose an important piece of your history. You can maintain them because they are historical, but otherwise you can't use government money to build a temple or build a mosque. That is what Article 27 clarifies. At the same time, to build a temple, you cannot tax someone. You cannot tax someone and use that to build a temple. But at the same time, repairing of these historical temples is not a religious act. It's a secular act. That is a responsibility of the government to maintain these historical sites. Just because I pray there, it doesn't mean it's not historical. And just because it's historical, it doesn't mean I can't pray there. It's a historically important spot because people pray there. But that prayer element is eliminated. Maintenance of a temple that is very old, maintenance of a mosque that is very old is not the same. is building something new. Article 28, freedom from attending religious based education. In a state owned institution, 28 clause 1, 28 clause 2, in an institution that is managed by a state, which was initially had a the initial owners was a religious trust, and this religious trust is managed by the state. So 28.1 owned by the state, 28.2 a religious trust that is managed by the state, and 23 institutions that are recognized and aided by the state. So if a school is owned by a state, if a school is run by a trust which is managed by the state, and a school which is, or college, applies to college also, a school which is recognized by the state and aided, government aided school. In these three places, you cannot have compulsory religious education, even if you are a minority. If you are a minority institution, you can conduct a religious function, but that will be optional. That will be optional. I have actually attended some places where religious education was sometimes imparted, or some for a 1 week camp or 2 day camp was held. No one was forced. If you want to, please register your name. You're welcome to come. You can be of any religion and we will teach you. Voluntarily, this person can be asked to go. But involuntarily, you cannot force anyone. You cannot force anyone. And this is best conveyed by a 1971 case example. 1971, TAV College was Punjab. TAV College was Punjab. So Guru Nanak University is there in Punjab, and they started a new course on the life and teachings of the Sikh Gurus. The life and teachings of Sikh Guru would be studied as a part of one course. Case was filed saying this is propagating Sikhism. Sikhism is compulsorily being taught. Supreme Court said that you can be a Hindu and still study what Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh taught. You can be a Muslim and you can obtain a degree in Sikh studies. That is, studying Sanskrit is not a religious affair. Studying Gurmukhi is not a religious affair. Studying Arabic is not a religious affair. It's an academic affair. It's research. I can be a Muslim and I can still learn Sanskrit and read Sanskrit text and do research. Maybe in a Sanskrit text there is someone has written in Sanskrit about how the Arabic world and India had ties 1400 years ago. Maybe I will learn how to read Sanskrit and find out. I will learn how to read Arabic and find out about the trade relations in Saudi Arabia. They've written in Arabic language, so I will learn Arabic and read about how Saudi Arabia and India had trade. This is an academic exercise. I will learn about the life of Guru Nanak and find out how he went to different parts of India and traveled and found out. Maybe these are all research that we can understand only if we study about their life. So studying about their life, learning about their life, learning about their teaching is not a violation of Article 28. It's not a religious education. And even then, the course is not compulsory. You choose to study the course. That's something that you need to understand. Similarly, in Aruna Roy versus Union of India 2002, NCERT was teaching about non-violence, was teaching about love, was teaching about not spreading hate. The Supreme Court said every religion talks about not spreading hate. Every religion talks about spreading love. Every religion talks about preventing violence. How can you assume that it is only one religion? And even if every religion is talking about it, these are principles that even irreligious people, I am an atheist, I don't believe in any god or any religion. Let us assume. Let us assume that I am an atheist. I don't believe in any god or any religion. I can still believe in love. I can still believe in not spreading hate. And Supreme Court said that these are all values that every religion follows, therefore it is secular. Secondly, this is a value that someone with no religion can also follow. Being non-violent, spreading love, these are all values that we can learn from. So in India, yes, to sum up, Article 25 gives you the right to practice, profess and propagate religion, but at the same time, these are subject to public order, health, morality and Part 3, other Part 3 rights. Therefore, you cannot exercise your religion in a way which others are affected. 26 says that you have the right to manage religious affairs. You can buy your own property. You can manage your own property. You can manage your own affairs. You can run charity. Charity includes school. Article 27 says you cannot be forced to pay tax. At the same time, the tax that you pay cannot be used for any one religion. Finally, Article 28 says that in a school that is owned by the state, that is run by the state, that is recognized and aided by the state, in these three types of schools, you cannot force someone to attend religious education. You cannot force someone to attend religious education. But at the same time, religious principles which are of secular nature, teachings of religious leaders, as in an academic sense, all of this can be conducted without affecting Article 28 and affecting the right to religion. So here we understand that right to religion, we understand how religion is important and spirituality is important in India, but at the same time we understand how we are a multicultural, multi-religious society, and therefore we should bear in mind everyone's interests. So if your right to practice religion is affecting someone else's right to practice their religion negatively, then a balance is achieved. Stay safe, my dear students. We will meet soon.